Good evening. My name is Maniac, and welcome to another reading of The Acts of Gord, as written by the Gord. The Book of Apocalypse, Chapter 2. The Deception. Within days of the Gord's departure, the landlord agent arrived to meet the guardian again, though this time she brought not a message of hope and joy, but rather a message of despair and concern. She claimed that the store not only owed tens of thousands in unpaid rent, a total equivalent to 70% of the rent bill over 3 years, but because the guardian was running the store while the Gord was overseas, that debt now fell to him. Further still, she threatened that this amount would be forcefully collected by the landlord taking everything that the guardian owned or had ever touched. Greatly concerned, the guardian spoke to the Gord about this. The Gord noted that the rent claim was false, as it would have meant that rent was not paid for over 2 years. But even if such a debt did exist, it would be the Gord's responsibility. The Gord briefly explained contract law, how the guardian had nothing to fear, and even if the landlord agent pushed the issue, the only thing they could do would be to evict the store, as they could not do a seizure as no lease agreement was in place. If they honestly believe that I owe them that much money, they can bill me. Legally, the only options open to the landlord should such a debt exist were eviction, in which no seizure could be made as the lease agreement had long expired and provincial law only follows for a seizure of assets for rent arrears when a lease agreement is in place that has a definite starting and ending date, or citing abandonment of the premises and doing a seizure. Obviously, tossing the Gord stuff out onto the street wouldn't really accomplish much for anyone, as it would simply reduce the rental income from the store to zero in a building that was already half empty. But if a seizure could be orchestrated successfully, it would be a payday for everyone involved. The Gord returned to his writing and exploring. But back in the homeland, things continued to spiral downward. In the past, the landlord himself had met the Gord only once. The reason for this was that he was suffering from a degenerative disease and had departed to California to a hospital in the hope that they could help him. But it was all for naught, as his condition slowly worsened. As he was out of the country, the landlord agent was hired and given free rein to run the building. And free rein was the order of the day, as rent money given to her failed to arrive in the bank account of the landlord for the full amount. She had been taking cash for rent and writing receipt, then creating a new receipt for the rent ledger and pocketing the difference. Around the time of the Gord's departure, the family of the landlord had taken an interest in the finances of the building and noticed that a certain game store that appeared to have a lot of games and other inventory appeared to be some 2 years behind in the rent. They requested that something be done. Undaunted by the rule of law, the agent pushed the lie. They were getting ready to seize the store and sue the guardian for money owed. The guardian was ignorant of how the law works in such matters, and upon the advice of others also not versed in law, decided to capitalize on the moment. But to orchestrate such an event, it would take an organized conspiracy. Thus a fine conspiracy involving 3 were born: the guardian, the landlord agent, and the assistant to the guardian. All while the Gord continued to ride his mountain bike on the far end of the world. Stay tuned for Chapter 3.